Hi guys, it's Shelly with Strategic Sales Advisors, and welcome back to the Building Predictable Sales channel. Now, we've talked a lot about processes and pipeline in the last few episodes. I did some Q&A as well, but I kind of want to wrap things up this week and talk about documentation. Because if you are building a pipeline and an effective sales process tied to that pipeline, but you're not documenting it, you're actually setting yourself up for failure. So I want to talk today a little bit about what we want to document, why we're documenting that, and then also talk about, where we're going to make that documentation happen. So let's start with the what. And the first thing that we want to make sure that we're documenting is each different stage that a client or customer can spend in your pipeline, right? So everything from that initial intake of prospecting and finding the client to the discovery meeting, which we've talked about in detail. All of these different stages, we want to make sure that we are documenting that stage. Yours could be relatively simple. You could have 3 to 4 stages, or you could have a very complex pipeline and sales process with all of those stages. Because that's what a process is, right? It's the different stages in that life cycle, in that pipeline framework. So let's make sure that we are documenting each one of those stages, and we want to be tracking that consistently. On top of documenting, we also want to document the amount of time that someone is spending, that a client is spending in each stage in the pipeline, in each stage of that sales process. You want to make sure that you are, if it's taking you a week or 2 weeks to go from the prospecting to the discovery meeting to maybe a first demo if you have a product, those types of things. We want to make sure that we are tracking that time space in there. And not only that we're tracking that time space, but that we are tracking that by each of our client profiles. And we've talked about client profiles here on the channel, right? So again, we're tracking each stage. We're tracking how much time each client spends in each of the different stages. And then we're tracking that by the client profile. All right. So now let's take that and understand in each of those why we're doing it. So if we go back to the documentation aspect of it, right? Writing down, and when I mean documentation, I mean fully writing down each of those different stages. This is you building out your sales process. Having an effective written sales process allows you, if you are the primary salesperson currently in your company or organization, to build out each of the different phases so that when you are ready to bring in, maybe it's an additional salesperson, maybe you are, as the owner, are transitioning out of that role and you're bringing in a sales leader, whatever system or whatever future space, if you are now documenting each of the different phases that your business goes through in the sales life cycle, then you are making something that is repeatable into the future, not just for you, but for anybody that you do bring on. It'll make your ramp up time for your sales team much faster, much easier, because you have documented each of the different phases that they should expect to do with a client, right? So again, documentation is important. Then if we're tracking how much time each client spends in that, in each of those different phases of the sales process, that's also allowing us to look forward to forecasting. Every business should be forecasting revenue. You need to be able to forecast your revenue so that from an operational aspect, you make sure that you have the capabilities of then complying with any contract that you do sign and making sure that you are moving forward with each piece of business in the time that you have said that you will do that with the client, right? So if you can forecast when business is going to close, then you know when your business is growing, you know if you need to bring on more operational team members, or if you need to ramp up manufacturing, if that's the space you're in. If you're in a service-based industry, do you need to be focused in on hiring new practitioners? So if you are a CPA firm, right, and you are looking and you are doing business development and you're going through the pipeline and you can track how much time, you can start to see when clients will then go through into contracting and then into the operational aspect of your business. And are you full, and you maybe need to bring new people on or new CPAs on to help your clients or these new clients coming in, right? So tracking the time allows you to see that. On top of that, tracking the time that each type of client sits in your in your sales process, in the pipeline itself. Also allows you to start to spot anomalies, right? So if you are tracking, and we'll talk about this in here in just a second, if you're tracking by client profile, you can start to see trends in those spaces, and you can start to see aberrations in those spaces. So you can start to see, is there something happening in the industry? Because something happening once, that's not a trend. But if you're starting to see a shift, then length of time. Let's say that it's traditionally your clients have taken 2 to 3 weeks before they get to the contract stage from demo to contract stage, and all of a sudden you're seeing that stretch a little bit with new clients or potential clients coming on. Everything else per se, the profile is the same, the client profile is the same, but you're seeing that stretch a little bit. You're seeing that trend of people taking a little bit longer to make a decision. Could that be that, there's outside forces such as economic indicators affecting it? Is there something going on within your industry that could be affecting that? Is there a new competitor in town that maybe is affecting that, that's maybe adjusting their pricing or doing other things to try to attract the same clients that you are going after, right? So it allows you to be more proactive than reactive if you are tracking the time, because you're allowed to, you can forecast, you can spot trends in your business. You can also, as a leader, if there are other sales team members within your organization, it allows you to also manage and monitor them. If you see that you have a team member that has clients that are sitting longer in certain stages of the pipeline, right, in those different stages of the sales process, then maybe it's a situation where they need some additional training and support to be able to get into the rhythm of closing clients in the space that they should be, right? So if you have somebody who maybe isn't uncovering everything in discovery, and they're getting to the demo stage or that next stage in your pipeline, and things are stalling there because they haven't uncovered enough, maybe there just needs to be a little bit more training on effective discovery skills, so that when you get to that next stage, you have uncovered all of those client pain points and you're ready to help solution them. You're ready to give them a great proposal, or you're ready to demo the right product that will work for whatever is going on with them. So thinking ahead in those spaces. Okay. Now I've mentioned this a couple different times on tracking this by client profile as well. Most companies don't have a singular client profile that they are working on or that they are working from. You usually have several. You don't want to have just a plethora. You don't want to have just, every client profile under the sun. But most companies and organizations have multiple client profiles that they're working with, whether that's having, a commercial side and a residential side in a cleaning business or anything else like that. So what we want to be doing is tracking that by client profile, because that gives us a couple of other data points that we can really look at, right? So we start to see the time that it takes specific client profiles to go through the pipeline, through from, initiating to contracting. We see what the conversion rate is by client profile in that space, where are the drop-off points, and we start to see which ones close quick and which ones take a little bit longer, right, to close. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing. I think I've talked about this before. If it's taking you a little bit longer to close a client, it could be because of size of contract. It could be from complexity scale and things like that. It could be because it's complex, they need to bring in legal to look at things, right? So things that just slow the process down a little bit more. So these aren't bad things if a client closes quicker or longer. But it does give you an opportunity to say, in those longer closing spaces, because if you think about it, you got to think about it from a timeliness of your sales team or your time. If you are still doing the sales process itself, what is the value of your time and how long is that taking? And if the clients are taking significantly longer to close, what's the value at the end of the contracting? And does it make sense that it's taking that much longer? Or do you maybe need to focus on a different client profile? I hope that makes sense. If that didn't make sense, please let me know in the comments themselves. But it's sort of, you're basically breaking down each client profile into a valuation from a time perspective, from a money perspective, time, money, resources. In a business, that's all we have, time, money, resources. So we want to make sure that we are utilizing those to the biggest effect. The other side of it, in tracking time in the pipeline by client, we do know that, there are complex clients out there, that there are in our businesses, there are spaces that are a little bit more complex. And so working with those types of clients, if we are also running into not only complex contracting, right, complex business opportunities, but then on the other side of that, we're also dealing with a client expectation that maybe is out of range or out of our range, and it's not aligning, right? We've missed something in that discovery where maybe we're not culturally aligned on things. Then that's another data point that we need to be tracking. So you're tracking that client through the process, the time that they're in the process, the value of the business, and then what is the cost, for lack of a better way of saying it, of actually implementing that contract on your side. So the time, the resources that you're dedicating to making that client happy and that contract a success. And using all of that data, right? So if we're not documenting any of these points through this, then we have a major challenge because we can't start to see our business on paper. We can't start to see where our revenue is coming from on paper. And that makes it very, very difficult for us to repeat that process. How many times have you run into a situation where you get through a great quarter or you get through a great year and you're like, man, that was a great year, but I don't know how we did it. And that's because you haven't documented the process. You don't have an identified process that is now written down, documented, and that everybody is using. Okay? So very, very important. Finally, I want to talk about where you're going to document this. Now, in a lot of smaller businesses, we tend to see documentation happening in Excel spreadsheets or in a very one-sided or one-spot space, if that makes sense, right? It usually lives on one computer or in somebody's head. And while that's great, you run such a high risk of losing all of your information, losing all of the data points, and frankly, then running any kind of reporting and doing any kind of data analysis, right? That's huge. We need to be analyzing all of our data and our information. That becomes very, very difficult to do. So if you do not have a CRM, right, a customer relationship management tool, if you are not using an online tool, then you need to get that. I'm going to just full stop. That's the point. You need to get one. And there are so many systems out there, from very simplified to very complex, from no cost initial, coming in with limited capabilities to, very high cost because they can be fully customized to your business. And even there are some that are set up out there for specific industries already, where people have identified that there are unique points within an industry, such as the financial space, all of that, where they have created CRMs for practitioners to use that make sense for their business, that track along and align with their business. So I would say I highly suggest that you get out there and you test. There's a ton of them. If you are looking for a suggestion, please connect with me. I'm more than happy to share some of those free resources out there that you can use to at least get started with a CRM. Most of them have the capability to roll data in from an Excel spreadsheet, so that you're not just having to manually load information. I know sometimes that's a sticking point for a company that's been around for a little while and hasn't had a system. It's just putting the data into the system so that you have it there. So some of them will roll some of that data in there. There is a manual aspect of it at the very beginning, but as we know, sometimes you have to front load a little bit of pain in order for your business to run a little bit more strategically in the end. So again, just to wrap up this video, again, we want to be identifying and documenting each stage. We want to be tracking that by each customer profile. We want to be tracking the time that each customer spends in that space. And we want to be doing that in a system that allows us and multiple people to be able to get into that system, to be able to utilize the data, for us to run reports and analyze so that we are creating the most effective business possible. This will help you grow. Guaranteed, this will help you grow your business. I hope you found something valuable today. I'm going to stop there. We have much more coming in the future. We're going to talk about methodology, and we're going to talk about all kinds of fun things like goals and compensation plans and how to put those together. But if you are finding value in this, please, please, please subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up and or write a comment in. There's also information where you can connect with me further if you'd like to just find out more or talk a little bit more in detail about anything that you're going through. And thanks, guys, for coming around for another week.